Hello everybody, Mike Westphal here with McDonald Garden Center. Hope everybody is having a great day and hope you're enjoying this amazing fall weather. Fall is my favorite season. It really is such an amazing time, when the trees start to change colors, the cooler temperatures, you get a little bit more rainfall. It's a great time to get out in your yard and do all of these different activities, whether it's pruning or redoing your lawn, but really dressing up your front porch is one of my favorite things to do. So today we're going to do my 3 favorite fall planters. This is basically kind of what I do almost every year on my front porch, with a little bit of change, and I'll talk about that. In one of my containers, I always kind of try and do something different and try different kind of recipes and different things like that. But I'll talk about some of my favorite things that I like to use on my front porch, and this could be a front porch, a patio, out in the landscape. You can do containers everywhere. They're so much fun, and they add such a diversity to the collection in your yard and on your front porch, and it can change, and that's why I love containers. I'm always kind of fluctuating and changing and doing different things. So we'll talk about all of those great things. Let's first talk about a couple of the quick basics. Go through this real fast. What will you need to do your containers? Well, you'll need containers, of course. You'll need a pot. So I love terracotta. It's going to be one that I probably use a majority of here. It's one that I use throughout the year because I just think it flows perfectly throughout the seasons. I love terracotta. Now, I know a lot of people are concerned about terracotta cracking in the winter, and that can be an issue. You just got to watch your temperatures. If it looks like it's going to be really, really cold outside, you want to make sure that the pot isn't super saturated. Also, if you're using a saucer to protect your deck or something, then make sure that it doesn't have any water, because terracotta will absorb moisture, and when it freezes, it can crack. Now, you've also got glazed ceramic containers are absolutely amazing, and plastic work as well. So there's lots of great opportunities to use different containers and change them throughout the season. So there's lots of things there. Now, of course, you'll need potting soil. So potting soil is really important. We want to make sure that we're using a good potting soil, a high quality potting soil, because if you don't, then you're going to run into issues down the road. And so we always want to make sure it says potting soil. If it says garden soil, that's for in the ground. Compost in the ground, topsoil ground. Potting soil is designed for pots, so you want to make sure you're using a potting soil. And then, of course, we'll need plants, mums, pansies, the Swiss chard, cabbages and kales, ornamental peppers, celosia. The list goes on and on of what you can use, and I'm going to talk about a lot of those today of what you can use to kind of dress up your containers and do some fall containers. Also, what you're going to need is some plant food. So this is very important. Most of your fall blooming plants, and even your fall plants in general, are pretty heavy feeders. So we're going to want to make sure that we feed them. In a container, they don't have access to natural resources. They'll get a little bit out of the potting soil, of course, but you want to be able to add some nutrients. And Biotone Starter is one of my favorite. It's starter, and that's why you want to put it in the soil with the plant. It's a very important part to get those roots generated, get those root systems running. And it really forms a great relationship between the mycorrhizae and the beneficial bacteria and the root system of your plant, and it makes the root system explode. So Biotone Starter is one of my go-tos. You got to use that. It's one of my major things that I always talk about when I talk about planting in the ground or in containers. It's a really, really helpful thing. And then, of course, our green leaf plant food is a great one, and blooming and rooting are something that you would want to add down the road. So start off with Biotone, and then about 2 to 4 weeks later, you want to come in with some green leaf or some blooming and rooting to help kind of keep those plants going. So make sure to pick that up as well when you're picking out your plants, your containers, and your potting soil. All right, so now the rest of this webinar will be you and me and talking about what I'm going to plant up, so we can get really kind of in depth here. And the first one that I really want to talk about is really, really simple. And I love this because it's easy to do and anybody can do this. And that's basically taking and doing what I've done back here, which is single plants, one plant in a container. And I've just dropped these in for ease, but what you can do with containers is so simple by just taking a plant, and I typically, on my front porches, I'll plant these in there. But just taking something like this amazing kale. This is an ornamental kale. These actually get brighter and brighter as it gets colder and colder. So this purple in the center, I don't know if you can quite see it, will get darker and brighter and just absolutely amazing through the winter season. So here in the early part of the fall season, you can start to see a little bit of that purple coming in there, but there's some that have white. The kales and the ornamental cabbages are absolutely amazing. And just dropping it in a terracotta pot and having a selection of different terracotta pots all around your front porch. It's very, very easy. It kind of goes back to our simple recipe that I always talk about, which is a spiller, a thriller, and a filler. same concept, we're just going to add them in pots by themselves. So we're not gonna actually make a combination. The reason I like this is it's easy. Anybody can do it. You can always change it. So you can say, well, I didn't really like this pairing that I made over here, so I'm gonna move it around a little bit. I'm gonna change a little bit. And then of course, adding pumpkins and gourds is a very simple thing to do. So over here, I've got an ornamental grass, which would be a great container by itself. It's a great one to add into a combination container, but just by itself, it adds a lot of height, and this would be my thriller. And then my filler is going to be my mum. So I've got this great, gorgeous golden mum that looks amazing. It's gonna bloom all the way through the fall season. It's a great plant. And then when it does fizzle out, we can always plant some pansies or something different in there. Nothing's gonna last forever, but great thing about mums is you can plant them in the yard and they're perennials and they'll come back each year. So I've got my mum here, which is a great kind of contrast color, acts as my filler, and then my spiller is going to be my cabbage, my ornamental kale. So really, really easy one. Now, spillers, of course, typically spill over the side, but this is kind of the same kind of idea, is that it's a lower plant. It kind of covers up the rim of the container. And by adding these into a group, you basically created this great look. And add to your collection of terracotta pots or ceramic pots or plastic pots or whatever you like to use. It's a very simple way of doing it. And I've done it and I've continued to do it all the way through here. So you can see I've got a great marigold, an orange marigold, so I'm adding some different colors. So I've got that dark purple, the green, the bright yellow, add a little bit of orange. You could add a lemon cypress like this one, add some pumpkins, add some different plants like, I love this celosia. So really, again, very simple. Plant a celosia in a smaller pot and change your sizes too. So add different sizes in when you're doing your kind of chromatic plants. So if you're just doing a single plant in a container, then you can just mix them up and do different colors and do different things. I've got this great ornamental pepper here. So it's a great another kind of spiller option. Reds and yellows mixed in there, but it's a really, really simple way of being able to mix up. And then maybe you pop in a simple combo. So I've got this little combo here that I made up. So this is a kind of window box or a rectangular planter. Again, it's terracotta. It's a different style, but it looks great all mixed in with it. So this just has two little ornamental cabbages, and then this has this little purple ornamental pepper in the center of it. And that could be a pansy, it could be a lot of different things. So just adding another color to the scheme and a little bit of a combination there. So it's a little bit of a combo planter, but a very simple one that you can do and easy to kind of pull that off. And then of course I've got another one of these taller kales, and these are really pretty because it adds that dark, rich purple color. So just by adding all of these combinations, grouping them down your front steps, your front porch, is a great way to add a lot of excitement, that fall color. You can change colors. It's a very simple thing to do, and you're growing one plant in each pot, but you're creating a combination effect on your front porch. So it's a really cool way of doing it, and I do that on my front porch every year. I've got lots of containers that I have just single plants in it. A lot of them I do ivies. Ivy is one of my all-time favorites for containers because one, it prevents it from spreading around your yard, but it's a great way to just add a little bit of that spiller effect, and it's easy to use, and it works great in combinations, but it works great by itself too. So don't always get kind of bound into thinking I've got to mix my plants in a container and make a combo. I think that makes a great effect, but having a bunch of different combos on your porch might get a little chaotic looking. So just by doing single plants in containers, it takes the kind of guesswork out of it. You can always say, well, I don't think that works, so you can move it to a different location, add some pumpkins, add some corn stalks, some harvest corn, some gourds, squash, all of these great things that you can add to it during the fall season, and it works really, really well. And then it can work into winter too, which is what I really like. I mean, this I do year round. I have just single plants in containers that I can kind of move around and adjust, and it just gives you the flexibility to change and do different things. So that is my number one, or I should say my third. We'll kind of count down. But that is a great way of adding a lot of interest and color and kind of that combo effect, even though you're doing just one plant in a container. It's a great thing that you can do. It's super, super simple. So try that. I definitely recommend that. That's what I do every year on my steps of my front porch. Now I have different areas that I like to add different kind of combo containers. And so the first one that I'm going to do that I'm going to plant up for you is one that I think is kind of a little bit trickier to kind of understand. So we'll kind of go through this step by step. But it's a really, really easy one once you kind of get the idea, and it gives you a huge length of time of blooms and excitement. And so let's start with what some might call a lasagna planter, which is basically putting bulbs in the bottom and then some plants on the top. So I'm gonna plant in a terracotta planter here. I got this nice big planter. So it doesn't have to be super, super huge. What you need to do first is always think about the plants that are going in there. I always say pick your plants first. If you don't have a container that you're going to plant in, go pick your plants first. So what I started with was bulbs. I wanted to add some different bulbs to it and put those in different layers. So I needed to know the planting depths. It's pretty easy. It's pretty simple. When you plant in the fall for spring blooming bulbs, tulips and daffodils, which is what I grabbed, are right around the 5 to 6 inch layer. So that's about how deep you want to plant them. So knowing the planting depth is really important. So 5 to 6 inches deep for tulips and daffodils. Most likely your tulips are going to say 5 inches. I always say plant them a little bit deeper just because it makes them hold up a little bit better. I think they have a stronger stem when you do that. And daffodils are perfectly fine at 5 to 6 inches. They're very easy to grow. If anybody's ever grown daffodils, you know they're super, super easy. So that's going to be kind of my depth layer. Now I've also got some allium. Allium are, part of the onion family, and they have these huge globe-shaped blooms on top of them. Really, really cool one. The reason I grabbed this, and I don't know if I'm going to use this, but this can be down to 8 to 9 inches deep. So there's not many bulbs that go that deep, but these bigger alliums will. Now some of your smaller alliums are going to be in that 5 to 6 inch layer, which is typically what you have. Is you have a 5 to 6 inch layer, and then you've got a 2 to 3 inch layer. So we'll talk about that as we go forward. But alliums can go all the way, the giant alliums can go all the way down to 8 to 9 inches deep. So I talk about picking out your plants and thinking about what kind of bulbs you might want to plant because you need to pick out your container to match that. So of course I've got a container that has plenty of depth to support that planting. Now my next layer is going to be muscari and crocus. Two of my other favorites, and I know this is going to kind of bleed out here a little bit, but muscari is a great one, little bloom. It's got blue and white blooms, but it's a nice little tiny bulb. You can see those tiny little bulbs, and these go in that 2 to 3 inch layer, and then of course crocus are another good one. So these are the crocus, and these I got mixtures, and the reason I got mixtures is because I just want a plethora of blooms in the spring. Most of these are going to bloom early to mid-spring, so they should be blooming all around each other. And bulbs are really cool because they will shoot up through pretty much virtually anything. So no matter what we plant on top of it, the bulbs are going to come right out of it in the spring season and give us another secondary show. I think this is a really cool technique. It's very, very valuable and very easy to do. I mean, most of these bulbs are somewhere between maybe like $10 to $20, and you're getting 20 to 40 bulbs in a container or in a package. So to get 20 to 40 plants for $10 to $20 is a great deal. You can put them in the container, you get this great spring show, and then when you go to take it apart, you can go plant them in the landscape. Very, very easy to do. So the first thing we need, of course, is potting soil. So we'll start there. And I talked about the container briefly, but let me go back into that a little bit. Any container works as long as it's got a drain hole. Very important that we have drain holes on our containers because that makes sure that the water can go through the entire container and drain out the bottom. If you don't have a drain hole, it's not best to plant in that. If you can put a drain hole in the bottom, then do that. So if you've got a plastic pot that doesn't have a drain hole, you might want to add one. You can use a drill bit. It's pretty easy to do. With terracotta or ceramic, almost all of those should have drain holes. If they don't, then you should probably choose a different container. It's a little bit harder to water something that isn't going to be releasing the water out of the bottom of the hole. So I've got my container. I've got my McDonald potting soil. You can use any good quality professional potting soil. That's what this is. It's a great mix. All potting soil should have perlite, vermiculite, some compost, some bark matter basically. Keep it nice and light and airy. And whenever you look at a potting soil, it should look just like this. I don't know if you can quite see that, but it's got little white perlite in it. It's got vermiculite, and it's got nice, composted bark material. So we're going to take that and we're going to fill it up. Now sometimes you can get a ruler. You don't have to be super, super exact on this. I don't think I'm going to plant the alliums in this one. I'm going to plant the daffodils and the tulips at about 5 to 6 inches. So it's important to kind of think about your depth. You can get a ruler out if you want to be super, super specific, but it's pretty easy to just fill up your container and again, kind of just guesstimate. What I do recommend is I always like to leave a lip around the inside of my edge of my pot so I can water it very easily. So I don't want the soil up to the very, very top. So when you put your soil in, add another inch to it because you want to keep that inch kind of vacant of soil. So I'm going to add my soil here, and I want to get it to about that 6-inch level. So that's about right in there. So I've got it right there because I'm going to put another 6 inches of soil on top of this. So then I'm just going to open up. This is very simple. You can mix them up. You can do them in kind of groupings. I like to do them in groupings. I always find that bulbs tend to do better when they're kind of with their kind of, companions, I guess you could say. So bulbs, it's most important to know which side is up. That's, I think, the most important thing. So with tulips, let's see if I can find a better example here. Tulips, you can see you got the point on the top, and that's what you want up, is that pointy part, because that's where it's going to come out of. So I'm going to group these in threes, leaving space, and I'll show you here once I'm done, leaving space to put some daffodils in as well. I always like to do things in odds if I can. And this is a mixture of colors, so, it should come out in a nice mixture. It's hard to tell, obviously, what the color of the bloom is going to be when you have this bulb like this. Don't know what color it is, but just by randomly grabbing them, you should get some different colors. So this tulip mixture is a little bit of some red and whites, some reds, and then some yellows, which is going to go pretty well with the rest of my collection here. So there you can see what I've done with those bulbs without them moving. So I just kind of nestled them down in, and then I'm going to take my daffodils. So daffodils, these both go in that 6-inch depth layer, so you can mix these up. Now this is a double blend, which means they're double petal count, so it's a little bit of a nicer mix. And then I'm going to just put these all around those tulips. And one thing to know about daffodils is daffodils, no animal really likes daffodils. So squirrels, moles, voles, all of those different things out there, really voles, not moles. But most of those won't eat daffodils. So by putting daffodils around your tulips should protect them a little bit. I know a lot of people that grow tulips, and this is another great example here. This one's got actually some roots on it, so that's the point up. I'm just going to put these all around it. So if people have ever planted daffodil or tulips before, and they didn't come up, and then they went to look for them, and they weren't even in the ground anymore because they were gone and they were eaten, that's because either a vole got to it, or a squirrel got in there, or some other animal, some other herbivore got in there and ate it. So I'm going to use all of these daffodils and just surround those tulips. I'm going to save the other tulips for maybe another container or the landscape somewhere. But we'll put those in there, and then I'll show you that. Well, they moved a little bit, but you can see I've just got them all nestled around my tulips there. So we'll straighten those back up. And then it's as simple as just putting another layer of soil on it. So we know we're going to add another 6 inches of soil to this. This is a very simple process. And it's just going to put on an amazing show in the springtime. So we've got our next layer of soil in there. Spread that out. And then I'm just going to push down gently. I never want to compact my soil, so I'm just going to push it down nice and gently. I don't want to disrupt that. Now, here's a cool thing about what I'm going to plant in here. So I'm going to do my spiller, thriller, filler effect on top. And I'm going to use a really cool dinosaur kale as my thriller. I'm going to use pansies all the way around it as my filler. And I'm going to use some ivy as my spiller. So I mentioned ivy is a great one. So I've got these ivies with these nice long kind of tendrils on it. So we'll hang those out the edge. All of those, especially the pansy, most 6-inch containers are at a 3-inch depth. So your root ball is actually 3 inches. So we can put these different bulbs down in here, nestle them down into the soil, and then plant our pansies right on top, and we know we're at the right level. So it's a very easy thing to do. So let's start with the muscari. Now these are a little bit smaller bulbs, so they're going to be really small. So I usually just kind of dump them in and then straighten them up. And this time, instead of doing groupings, I'm going to do probably like a little bit of like a wave pattern and kind of like a grouping. So we'll just kind of sprinkle these in. And then we'll just straighten them up. So all I want is these little tips. So this is what a muscari bulb looks like. It's a little bit smaller. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus in on it. And you can see that point is what you want facing up. So real simple. So we'll just straighten these up. And I've got them kind of grouped. You know, I thought about maybe doing a wave pattern, but I think I might try something a little bit different. So let's see. I've got my crocus here. Now, if any of your plants on the top, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go forward, if any of your plants on the top start to kind of fizzle a little bit, you can always change them out. If like the dinosaur kale starts to bloom in the springtime and you want to get rid of it, you just cut it off because your pansies are probably going to fill up the container at that point, and then your bulbs are going to come up through. So it's going to be real easy. Now these are the crocus. I love this bulb. It's really cool looking. I don't know if you can quite see it, but it's got these kind of hairs on them. So it's kind of really cool looking. I know you can't quite see that, but again, same thing, the point side facing up. So I'm going to sprinkle these around. We'll use all of those. And they like being fairly close. So, you know, you can put them closer if you're doing a smaller container. If you're doing a bigger container, you can spread them out a little bit. I still like to do groupings if I can. It just adds a little bit more impact. It's the same concept that goes into a landscape design. You know, the more that you kind of put together, the better off you're going to be. It just adds more impact. Now, you can also do this differently. You can put like daffodils here, tulips here, muscari here, and crocus here. And you can add different things. There's lots of different types of spring blooming bulbs, but this is just what I chose. Like I said, the allium would work, but this is kind of going to be cool because we'll kind of create this nice little serpentine pattern throughout the interior of this container. So it'll kind of be, you know, the crocus kind of coming through, and then the muscari on the outer portion in that same kind of pattern. So there we go. You can kind of see it almost looks half and half, but it's really got a little bit of a curve pattern to it, and you can kind of play with it and each year do something different. So I'm just going to nestle those down in, make sure they're nice and neat, and then we'll plant our plants on top. So I've got my dinosaur kale here. Now, if you ever buy a kale or a cabbage and it's gotten a little tall on you, the cool thing about these is you can actually plant them a little bit deeper. So if I went and took, you know, like some of these older leaves off the bottom, because they will fizzle over time. So if I want to take some of those off, that one's actually pretty nice. So if this was a really nice big stalk here, I could go and plant it up to that top. Most plants, you always want to plant the root ball right on the top surface. We never want to change that, but in this case, we can plant it just like that. So all I've got to do is just kind of, and I always like to kind of rustle up my root ball a little bit. And then there we go. So we've got our thriller. Now this is going to be a very simple design thriller with my pansies and my ivy trailing out the sides of it. So it's going to be a nice simple container. So we'll just roll through that as I kind of go along. In fact, this is a great point to stop and add my biotone, because I want this to get right to the root system. And that way it's available to all of my pansies and my bulbs and my dinosaur kale. Now I picked this pansy because it's really pretty. It's got a little bit of those blue tones, purples, some rose colors. So it's a nice little mix, and it's going to go great with that kind of silvery colored dinosaur kale. So here we'll just add these. Let's see if I can do this in the front here so you can see. And then we'll just keep on grabbing. They got a little bit of yellow in them as well, which is nice. And I'm going to leave a little bit of space. Now, you don't have to always plant as kind of compact and tight as I'm planting. I tend to do that a lot, where I want it to look really, really good for you so you can see it and be like, oh, that looks great. But you don't have to plant them quite as close. All of these plants are going to grow a little bit. This one's got a little bit of that same kind of blue and maroon with a little bit of white and a little buttery yellow color in it. So I got 6. I don't think I'm going to need all 6. So let's see, I'm just leaving a little bit of space for each ivy, and then we'll just keep going around. So you can see there. And then we'll plant the other. Looks like I can get maybe 2 more in. I'd like to get another one with yellow in it. And I always like to kind of stage it a little bit too, so then I can see, okay, do I need to adjust a little bit? It looks like I do need to adjust a little bit, so I need to move that one over. And also another tip while we're kind of readjusting here is, if you've ever had allergic reactions to anything, wear gloves. because some people are allergic to tulips or ranunculus bulbs or different types of bulbs. So if you're using bulbs and making a lasagna planter, then wear some gloves. It might be a good thing to do just in case. And then I've got one more pansy here that I can squeeze in. And this is just a mix. You can do a simple yellow, you can do a simple blue. The blues I love, they get you right through Christmas, all the way through the winter as well. So there we go. We got all of our pansies in. Just that by itself would look really, really good. But I do want to add my spiller in. So we'll add these ivies in. These are going to be a nice, easy way of just adding a little bit of dimension, a little different texture. You could use a variegated ivy. You could use whatever you kind of wanted to do there. Just add a little bit of that kind of trailing habit out of it. These are been grown on a table, so they're a little bit more kind of sideways. So I'm going to kind of put a little bit of an angle on them. I always tell people that whenever you're looking for plants, especially for containers, we'll talk about this in my next one, that finding plants that are a little bit kind of different looking is perfectly fine because it'll actually help you. You can move your plants a little bit and guide them to kind of do exactly what it is that you want them to do in the container. Whether it's bouncing over or coming in or going through the container and going each way. And this one's got a nice long trailer. And if you make a container like this where I've got these long trailers and you're using an ivy like this or something that's long and trailing and you don't like that it's hanging on the ground, go and cut some of it off. It's perfectly fine. And then it looks like I need two more. We'll add that one and the last one. So very simple, easy design. Now this container would be viewed from all angles. And I'll hold this up as best I can to kind of show you. But really easy concept and design. And all I'd have to do now is just go through with my potting soil, get a little cup and fill in all my little gaps and then just water it in. Really, really simple. So you can see here, really nice container. Easy, easy, easy. It's got that same kind of setup that we always talk about, which is your thriller, your spiller with your ivy, and your filler with your pansies. Great color. This is going to last all the way through the winter season. It adds a lot of fall color too with that dinosaur kale. Don't always have to think of fall color as your oranges and yellows and maroons. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But think of it as just, color, yellows. This one's got yellow, maroons, purples, that silver color, and there's a classic green from the ivy. And then in the spring, it's going to put on a spring show because we're going to get all of those bulbs that are going to pop up through it. So it's a really, really easy container to make and kind of think outside the box a little bit and do something different. And so this one's a great one. Very, very easy. Just keep it watered. And then, like I said, if something happens, like the dinosaur kale goes, starts to bolt and starts to bloom and you don't really like it anymore, then just take it out because at that point, the pansies will fill in and all you have to do is just cut it off at the rootstock and then those bulbs will shoot up right through all the pansies and the roots of all the other plants. That's what they're designed to do. So really, really easy container and it's going to give you a show all the way into probably April or May. So it's a great, great way of kind of adding a different element deeper down into your pot. So really, really easy container to do. So we'll put that one off to the side. And that's one that I do every year because it just puts on that, it just kind of puts you in the spring mode when you start to see those bulbs popping out. And it's a really cool thing to do. All right, so the next one that I want to do is one that I do every year, which is a different one. And this is a combo, and this is one that I'm always going to kind of change and do differently. I've got a big blue planter that I have on the corner of my house, and I always do something different, whether it's, maybe going crazy, which is what I'm going to do today, going a little bit above and beyond, and trying some different things and some different techniques. And I'll talk about all of those as we go through them. But it can be simple too, but just change. It gives you the ability to change and do different things. And that's what's so fun. So I've got this. I'm going to use a plastic pot for this one. This is a gray plastic pot. I've got terracotta, green. You can use so many different colors. Plastic pots are great because they're lightweight. They're easier to move, especially if you're doing a bigger planter like this. So I've got lots and lots of plants. I probably won't use them all, but I will stop here for just 1 second and talk about one other thing, which is we have great combos here So if you're like, I'm not quite sure what I want to do, you can always just come in and pick one up. These are already done. You can drop them into another container, or it's a pretty decorative container by itself. So it's a very, very easy solution. Then you've got these different plants. This has got a juga, and it's got some ivy, and then your thriller here. It's a really, really nice combo container, and these are already pre-done here in the store for you. But what I also wanted to talk about was going through and looking at different combinations. You can go online and just look up fall combo planters. You can come into our store and get lots and lots of different examples to kind of intrigue yourself and think outside the box and think about the different things that you can do. So we've got great combos here, but I like to use other people's ideas to kind of create my own. So you'll always kind of not find those exact plants, but it might put you into a color scheme or an idea that maybe you've never tried before. So, got my container here, got my holes in the bottom, so I'm good there. This one's a really nice plastic planter, so we're just going to start with filling it up with soil. I do recommend filling up your container all the way with soil. Some people will put rock in the bottom. If you're doing that for weight purposes to create more weight, that's fine. But if you're doing it to improve drainage, your potting soil, if you're using a good potting soil, should have all the drainage you need. And it gives the plants a little bit more room to grow into. All right, so I got that actually probably pretty close to my depth. Now, here's my tip of the day for creating a really fun, wild kind of fall container, which is look at a croton, buy a croton. I definitely recommend having a croton. I think I love them because in the summer, they give me all the colors of that tropical kind of feel. So for the summer, it gives me all the tropical colors, but it also works perfectly into the fall season. So you get lots and lots of seasons out of it. It will kind of go if you leave it outside in the winter. So we want to make sure that we don't have this have a hard frost on it. But other than that, they're very easy to grow. And sometimes it works great in a situation like I was talking about earlier, where you can just have it in a single planter, mix it in with your front porch containers and all your different ideas, and then you can always bring it indoors and keep it through the winter and keep it year round. But you can also just let them go. They're not too bad. So, unfortunately, that's part of nature is sometimes we throw away plants, and annuals, when we put them in containers, they have an end point. But annuals bloom the entire time. So you can treat this as an annual, or you can treat it as an indoor plant and bring it in and protect it through the winter season. But the reason I love crotons is because of all of those different colors. So I definitely recommend, this is where I kind of, it's a little bit of a harder thing to teach, but to tell you that look for the subtle colors is really, really great tip to look for some of those smaller colors. So of course we see the yellows and the greens right away, but when you look in here at the back sides of some of these leaves, you can start to see these maroons, pinks, a lot of different colors. The lime green starts to pop out a little bit more, so that chartreuse green. So there's lots and lots of great colors, and I love crotons for that. So using a croton just to find the colors or kind of get a little bit inspired, but also using a croton in a container like this is a great thing. So I'm actually going to use this one in this container to start to pull from all those colors. And is it my thriller? I don't know. And this one's going to go a little bit outside of the box of a thriller, spiller, filler. We're going to have all those components in there, but there's going to be some competing ones. There's going to be some different ones in there that are going to be thrillers and fillers, and there's going to be 2 thrillers. So we're going to just kind of keep going off of that and playing off the colors. I do think I need just a little bit more soil in this one. I always like to have just a little bit extra because I can kind of move it around and allows me to tuck and fill in some holes here and there. So we'll start with our croton. A gentle little squeeze on the side of the pot. And then again, I want to make sure it's at the right level. I'm going to put this on the back corner. This container is going to sit, on an area where I'm only going to see maybe 2/3 of it. I'm not going to see 1/3 of it. So that's why the bigger plants are typically going to go in the back. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's typically what I like to do. And at this point, I'll add my biotone. And I'll put it all throughout my soil. That way I don't have to think about it. It's going to get right to the root system of my plants. So I've got my croton here. And then I've always got to think about which angle are people are going to be viewing this from. So I always want my plants to kind of have their best face forward, which is why sometimes I like buying plants or getting plants that are slightly, off kilt, because it works better in a container. So here I've really got this really pretty kind of purple undertone that I really want to show off, because that's the subtle color that I'm really pulling from. So I want that to actually be the front of my plant, where you can see the undersides of those leaves and a little bit more of that purple color. This has a little bit more of the green, which is great, but I want that more in the back. Okay, so we've got our plant facing the direction we want. So the first thing, of course, I saw was that kind of raspberry kind of purple color that you get on the backs of this. So I found this really, really nice celosia. So really kind of cool celosia. This will go all the way to a hard frost, which is also why sometimes, and again, I'm going to pack these plants in. You don't necessarily need to do that. Most of these will grow, but some of them actually aren't going to make it until, well, will make it all the way until almost Thanksgiving, mid to end of November. And then once we have that first hard frost, some of these things are going to go, and we can fill them in, or all the other plants will fill in around it. So that's pretty easy. So this celosia is really pretty. It pulls out that kind of raspberry color. So we'll take this, and this I just kind of want to nestle right in to this guy. So it allows those purple leaves to kind of marry up with that kind of purple plume or that purple bloom on that celosia, which is really, really pretty. I'm going to make sure I got the right side facing forward. And that's really kind of my two thrillers. So those are going to be my two taller plants. You could add some different things in there, but that's a really easy way to kind of just add some height and some texture and some really good contrast, but tying in those two very, very subtle colors. All right, so then the next thing I want to do is, obviously, there's yellow. There's a lot of yellow, so let's bring some yellow back into it. And of course, I love my mums. You could use pansies. You can use lots of different things. Lysmachia gives you a little bit of that kind of lime green yellow color. But this mum is going to be really pretty. And I don't want it right up on the yellow. I kind of want it to be able to pull in that other color from over here. So I want to be able to kind of contrast it with this, with the celosia, but bring in that color that we've got over here. So we're just going to make a little hole. And I'm just going to kind of tilt it just a little bit. I want it just a little bit kind of hanging over the edge. So again, kind of manipulating my plant and kind of making it kind of go the direction I want it to go. So already right there, I could be done. It looks great. But we're going to keep on going. We're going to keep adding to it. So I really, really love that purple. I still want to bring more of that purple into it. So I love these kales, that ornamental kale. So you can't quite see that purple color on the screen, I don't think. But it's really in there, and it's going to pull that out and the purple of the leaf. So again, we're looking for those subtle colors. And by just changing that color just a little bit, so by just taking and just changing that color slightly, it allows you to kind of really change the whole color pattern almost. So this one is also going to be kind of a filler. So we're going to put that right in the front there. Gives me a pocket here and a pocket here, and I've got lots of other options, so we're going to have to kind of decide what we want to do. Now I also found this snapdragon, which adds this really cool kind of burgundy color. It pulls right into it. It's slightly got some purple tones to it, but a little bit of yellow in the bloom. Again, we're looking for those subtle colors. So a little snapdragon. This will go all the way through the winter. So this one's kind of funky. Again, I love those kind of funky plants. This one's kind of like hanging off to the side. That's perfect. I want it to kind of dance out this way. I really want it to pull this purple color, but I really want it to hang out around the croton and kind of give just a different element out here. And maybe the croton it's kind of inside the croton a little bit. This is where I like to take my plants and just kind of force them in the direction that I want them to go in. So there you go, you can see that. All right, now what else do I have? Of course, I love pansies. I love that maroon in the pansy. I love the ornamental peppers. So I've got some other options here. This is where I kind of get to a point of saying, okay, what else does it need? So I've got that great ivy, which could look good with it as a good trailer. I've got this little purple ornamental pepper that adds that purple color, really plays nicely with this. You know, it has those colors and it's got a little bit of that kind of lime green in it as well. So we could use that. I also grabbed this other ornamental kale, this little kind of silvery green one. This one's going to get, I think, a white center. Yep, so a white center. So if you want to add a little bit of brightness, so I do like that. So we might use that. And then, of course, pansies are a great one to add as well. So I found this pansy that has both of my colors in it. It's got the yellow and it's got that maroon kind of purple color. It's got, of course, the face on it, that dark face. So it's really going to blend nicely in this container and give me just a little bit of a splash of color here in the front because it's got really a ton of color back here, but then we're getting a little bit darker and green up here. So let's put a pansy up in the front for sure. We know we need that. So I always start with what I know I need. Trying to do this so you can see it. So there we go. That brings that yellow. So now we got yellow, dark, yellow, yellow. So we've got all these kind of contrasting colors that all tie into each other. So it's working out really, really well. And then if I can squeeze in this ornamental kale, or maybe this pepper. I think I like the pepper. I mean, I've definitely got a space in the center for the pepper. So let's do that one. I've got a big kind of hole here in the center that allows me just to pop that pepper in there. And then if I can squeeze one more plant in, I really would like to add a little bit of brighter color with that silvery kale. It could be either that or, and I have enough space, perfect. So again, this is much tighter than it needs to be, but if I've got a party this weekend and I need to put on a show, this is a way of doing it. And then I can always go back and kind of change some things. And I know not every single plant is going to last all the way through the winter season, but we're putting on a fall show. And I think I want to go with this kale rather than that ivy. The ivy's got a little bit of more white in it, where I really like the silvery green of this. So we're going to add this. Let's see if I can get this in without damaging anything. Perfect. So now I've got my pansy here. There we go. Look at this. So that turned out really, really well. And an easy thing to do. So at this point, I'd go back through, make sure I've got biotone in all my little gaps. I'd fill it in with all that soil. But another really fun thing to do is add a little bit of, orange color or even something different like this yellow pumpkin, but you could add something like that. Super, super easy. And it's another great option as you kind of start to change or lose some plants. Like, obviously some of these plants are going to go when it starts to get really cold. So we can always come through and pop a little pumpkin in here. Sometimes it's actually easier in the initial stage to just start with a small little guy like this. So we'll just take this, clean them off, and we can always just pop them right in here, just to add a little bit of that kind of really cool fall color. So really easy container. This was, a little bit more complicated. We're thinking a little bit more outside the box. We're doing some different ideas, some different techniques, but really, really nice looking container. And it's got all those elements. It's got spiller, thriller, filler, but it's really playing off of all the different colors. So this is a new one. Every year that I make one, it's different, but I always try and push my limits a little bit. I think that's where you're going to find some of the differences that you can do and the different techniques that you can use and different ideas. So, really easy container. Just kind of think outside the box and look for those subtle colors. So this is a great way of doing that, of taking the croton. That was my main component. So we'll spin this all the way around so you can see. This is going to be the bad side. It's not bad, but it's just the back side. It's not super symmetrical. We don't want it to be very, very symmetrical. We want to, again, think outside the box. So I took this croton and I just said, I'm going to play off of that color. I found that purple color. I pulled it out with the celosia. I wanted to bring the yellow back in from the croton, so I got my mom. And then I wanted to bring some purple, bring that contrast back in. So I've got my nice cabbage over here, my kale. And then I've got the pansy that adds the yellow and the purple. Then we add a little bit of green, silvery green, just to add that texture and that form. And then the snapdragon that pulls it together as well. And these spikes are just going to keep on coming up. And then we go back to our croton and we have our little purple pepper in the center. So great looking container. I think this turned out really, really well. And that's all I really want to teach you, is just look for some of those subtle colors. don't always be confined to the specifics of spiller, thriller, filler, and don't be confined by symmetry. Think outside the box, try some different things. What I like to do when I'm shopping around for plants like this is I'll put them on top of my cart and I'll just kind of change them and manipulate them and move them around. But ultimately I'm looking for, some different forms, some different texture, pulling out those subtle colors. So kind of a tricky technique, but over time you'll get it. It's pretty simple once you do get it. And if you mess up, it's not the end of the world. We can always change it. That's what's so great about container gardening and planting in containers and pots is you can always change it and do different things. So I encourage you to have fun. I encourage you in the fall season to get out there and work on some of your containers and do different things, whether it's making something really big and crazy like this that'll last for a long time, or the lasagna planter that we made that's got the bulbs in it, or just taking single plants and putting them in containers and sorting them around your front porch. It's a very simple thing. These 3 techniques I use every single fall season. I do it in the spring as well. It correlates to every season. It's a really, really fun thing to do. So these 3 techniques are what I use pretty much every year, all year round. But get out there this fall and enjoy some fall containers. I hope you all enjoy this. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. I don't see any questions, so have a great day, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. See you next time. Bye, everybody.